So here's what I want to close on, and I'm going to just say this as plainly as I can. I want to talk to these people. We're going to put her and Muslims aside for a minute. I want to talk about the reparations thing. And here's what I would want to say to Al Sharpton, who, as you may know, is leading this move for reparations for slavery. Now, we did pay reparations to the Japanese that were interned in World War II, but I think that's different because that was a payment made to the people who actually suffered the harm. Wasn't made to their great-great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren. It was paid to the people who suffered the harm because I think a big injustice was done. So forget the case, okay? This is the point. Let's just get this clear from the beginning. I'm not talking about whether or not there's a case for reparations. Just forget that. Just put it aside. Forget it. Here's where I'm going with this. I want to sit down with Al Sharpton and say, okay, what did you have in mind? Now just play with me on this. Just hear me out. I want to hear them say, what did you have in mind? Well, certainly we need to have be made right for all the economic disadvantages that we've suffered. Fine. So it's a check then, basically. Yeah. All right. Well, how much? I want them to say, have you noticed? Now stay with me for this. Have you noticed that you never hear what the reparations are, only that they deserve them, only that they're due them? Forget about whether they deserve it or not. It's not relevant to my point. My point is, if you were to sit down on national television as the President of the United States and just sit down and say to Al Sharpton and whoever else you want to loop into this in order to gain all of the credibility you can, say, what do you want? What is it you want? And I'll bet you anything they would not answer that question. Now listen, the reason they won't tell you what they want is because they don't want reparations. They want you to think that you owe them is what they want. They don't want reparations. They have never said what those reparations are. So I say, and I'm going to do a firewall on this, I guess I'll do it next week. I say, let's pay it. I'm as serious as I can be. I say, let's pay it. Let's do the math. Let's pick a number. I think we could probably agree $100,000. I bet you most people in the country who they've determined deserve reparations would take $100,000. I think that's 7 generations down. Let's say it's $100,000. And forget the whole thing because, I mean, how are you going to determine, no. If you're a person of color, you get the reparations. I don't care. If you're a black person, I don't care. The fact that Barack Obama would have to pay reparations to himself because he's half white, I don't care about any of that. What's the number? They won't give you a number. That tells you something. But let's just say the number was $100,000 times 11 million black Americans. Did I do that math wrong? Let's try it again. $100,000 times 1,000. It's $100 million, right? No. Can somebody just please do the math for me? I don't know what the hell the matter with me is, honestly. I used to know how to do this. Can somebody just multiply 100,000 times 11 million for me, please? And just give me the answer. This is the kind of thing I should have been able to do as a 4-year-old, and I probably was able to before I got a smartphone to make me stupid. What is 100,000 times 11 million? We're just looking for a number, right? We're not making a legal case here. I'll wait while the adults in the room with functioning brains will immediately kick this answer up, and I'll get 9,000 copies. 1.1 trillion. Thank you. Okay. That's a lot of money. That's $1,000 billion. 1.1 trillion. Okay. So let's just call it a trillion. $1,000 billion. Well, we're 25 trillion in debt. Our annual federal budget is 3.5 to 4 trillion, but our GDP is much higher than that. So let's say it's $1 trillion. We've already paid well over $1 trillion we pay $1 trillion probably every 2-3 years in terms of entitlements, right? So just stay with me on this. We pay entitlements to the tune of 250,000 for Medicare and 250 billion for Medicare, 250 billion Social Security, all of it. We're just dealing with ballpark, okay? Just ballpark. We're dealing with a figure. You know what? I don't care what the total is. Forget the total. I don't care. It's not relevant to me. I say we have it and we can pay it. So let's say that it's 5 trillion. And that's it. I'm not going to argue about it anymore. Let's just say. And that this money will be divided up equally among the people of color in America who have decided that they're entitled to. So let's say it's $5 trillion. Well, every year we pay $500 billion in entitlements. So we're really talking about 10 years worth of entitlements. So let's say we pay it. Now what happens? Let's say that they get their agreement on entitlements, and I'm going to be doing the paying, but let's just say, all right, we agree. $100,000 to every person who claims to be descendant from slaves. Those will be the reparations that your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents suffered. Right? Fair enough? Here's a check, $100,000, take it or leave it. Yes, they'll take it. Most people would take it. Needless to say, there are millions of black people of sterling character who would simply scoff at the whole idea. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the left. I'm talking about the left. So here's $100,000. Thanks. You got to sign here first. What am I signing? You're signing a document, legal document, that says that in payment of $100,000, you have been made whole, and we're even. What now? That's what a reparation is. A reparation is a payment to make things okay, to make things right. So here's $100,000 for something that your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents suffered. And people like me are going to pay it, even though my family didn't get here until 1915. It's 50 years after slavery. But okay, this is what you want. This is what we'll pay you, $100,000. It's $100,000, and no tax on it either. So here it is, and all you have to do, it's not strong-arming, it's a simple agreement. It's just a simple, constant contract agreement. It's nothing to it. It's like any other contract. It's like any other legal settlement. It's like any other legal settlement. I fell down in your restaurant. Okay, what do we owe you? Well, because of injury, yes, fine. Now I can't even spell the word restaurant anymore without breaking. Yes, fine. And even when I see the letter R, I start to have heart palpitations. Yeah, fine. What's the number? $100,000. Okay, you sign this document. The restaurant gives you a check for $100,000, and it's over. It's over. It's done. It's closed. So now you have a check for $100,000 in one hand and a piece of paper that says that in exchange for this $100,000, I renounce any further claim to injury on the part of white America. You want reparations? Here they are. Almost everybody would take it, of the people who are low enough to, to want to take it. But this is why this is such a strong argument. Grant it. It's like I say, always grant them. Anytime you have an argument that seems ridiculous, grant it. Just assume. Okay. So those of you that are carrying this grievance, here's a check for $100,000. Sign on the dotted line. You and your children and everybody else have been made whole by this payment, and that's the end of it. We're square. first of all, that would be the best money we could spend in this country, because if this thing doesn't get behind us, and I'll tell you something else, that scheme of mine for $5 trillion would be the kindest thing that we could do to Black Americans. It'd be the kindest thing that we could do. Not just because we're giving $100,000 to people, because that's trivial. What we're giving them is we are giving them the gift of no longer having the club of victimhood. Okay, here you go. Here's $100,000. Start a business, go to college, whatever you want. Here you go. But we're even now. Whatever that number is. I don't think Al Sharpton would ever accept any amount of money, $10 million per person. He wouldn't take it because he understands. Al Sharpton's a multimillionaire. He doesn't need the money. He's got all the money he needs. What he needs is the weapon. And I'm saying, let's just buy the weapon. If this is the weapon that's carving America in half, if this is the weapon that's destroying the peace and the comedy of this country and the decency, if this is the knife that is cutting us in half, I say let's buy it. Let's not fight for it. Let's just buy it. What's it going to cost for us to take this knife out of your hands? How much money? What you talking about? And whatever that price is, we agree to it. We pay it. Because if we paid it, the guilt would be over. Needless to say, if I feel like I have to work in order to pay $100,000 to people who were not slaves or descended from slaves while my parents were not slaveholders, that's going to generate some real resentment on my part. Now we both have some resentment. Now we both have a case. Now we both have anger. But what we really got is, once you take that money, if you ever open your mouth about it again, you could say with a perfectly clear conscience, hey man, you got your goddamn money. It's over. We're square. That would be, it'd be the best money we could spend in this country. Just pay it. I'm not saying they deserve it. On the contrary, my entire point is that they don't deserve it. That's why we should pay it. I would still, now needless to say, that plan is not going to happen, but what I think is in the realm of actual possibility is I would like to sit down and have an opportunity to corner Al Sharpton and to say specifically, what do you want? We want reparations. I understand that, and I understand what a reparation is. So what I'm asking you is, what do you want by way of reparations? What kind of reparation do you want? What is the amount? What do you want? Tell me what you want. Tell me what this fight is all about. In fact, better way to put this, tell me what will make this right. Tell me what will make all of this even. Give me a number. Tell me. He will never tell me because he can't. The reason he can't tell me is not that he doesn't know. The reason he can't tell me is because he's terrified that I'll pay it. And if I pay it, it's over. If we pay it, it's over. This whole thing that's been going on for 250 years now in this country, this whole thing, it's over. It's done. It's done. Here's a gift. Here's a gift of $5 trillion. And the gift is not the $5 trillion, which is just going to go back into the economy anyway. The gift is, here's a gift to free you from thinking that other people are keeping you down and that your failures are the result of other people's actions. Now you realize this is the gift that we're going to pay it, and then and now you're free. We paid a lot of white blood and money and treasure to free black people in the Civil War, and if that wasn't enough to atone for it, it was good enough for the people who were actually freed. But since they're great grandchildren are unhappy about this. Here's your number. Here's your check. Now we're even. That is really, really brilliant. It just is. Granted. By the way, we would add $5 trillion to a $25 trillion deficit, which was what, 15, 14, 11 trillion when Barack Obama came into office. See how this mind of mine works? Here you go. Here's money. Here's $100,000. Tack it onto the bill. Just put it on our tab. And you write the checks and they cash the checks. And all of this $5 trillion goes into the economy. I'm not saying it would stimulate the economy. I suspect if you put that much cash out there, it would simply drive inflation. But, okay, who gets hurt most by inflation? Poor people. So, it's a way to think about things. It's a way to clarify things. I was talking with somebody today, somebody who's got a really good system to reduce domestic violence. We're going to have lunch with him next week. And he said, geez, Bill, I can't tell you how much it means to me. Your work is so important. I'm not buttering my own bread here. I said to him, listen, this is not theory. I'm not some genius who invented all this stuff. I didn't come up with any of this. None of this stuff is mine. None of this is my idea. Nothing. All I do is take complex things and make them simple. And anybody can do it, I think. And the reason it's easy to make complex things simple is to just assume that this complex thing, wind it up and put it out in the world and see what happens. Instead of trying to fight it theoretically, this is a bad idea because we don't know how do we decide if somebody's one? No. It just goes on forever. No, grant it. Don't argue with people about why there can't be a Loch Ness Monster. Grant that there is a Loch Ness Monster. And then ask, why aren't there more pictures? Don't argue about the smudges and the ripples and the waves and all the rest of it. Say, okay, you've convinced me. There's an air-breathing pterosaur that lives in this lake. It's the last surviving specimen of an extinct race of dinosaurs, just like you said, and it lives in caves and so on. But it is an air breather, right? I said pterosaur. Plesiosaur is what I meant to say. It's a plesiosaur, right? It does have to stick its head up for air, right? Yep. Okay. Well, then why don't we just sit around the lake for an hour? Why don't we hold hands? In fact, why don't we get enough people out here who believe in the Loch Ness Monster to hold hands all the way around Loch Ness so that we got it all covered, and then we'll sit there, and in the space of an hour, this thing's going to come up for air. If it's just loafing 10 times, maybe. Don't argue about the pictures. And don't even say, where are the pictures? Just say, okay, let's say you're right. And as I've said, I've used this analogy before. I love it. I say, you see, the reason that this proves that there's no Loch Ness Monster is because I can assert that there are enormous creatures that live underneath the surface of the water. Enormous creatures. And they're air breathers. And I can make this assertion. And I call these things whales. And the reason that I can be confident that whales exist and Loch Ness Monsters don't is because there's 1,000 pictures of whales taken every single day. I don't need a ripple on the horizon. I don't need a black smudge in a grainy photograph taken in 1934 to prove the existence of whales. If I want to believe in whales and convince you that there are such things as whales, we can get on a boat right now and go out and see a whale. Forget videos and all that other stuff can be fake, just like the moon landing. Come on, let's go. You don't believe in this whale? Let's go. Come with me. We'll get on a boat, and then you will see the whale, and you'll get to touch it. Just grant it. It's amazing. It's just amazing. It's like this is what I do with the immigration argument. It's been a while now, but Jessica Alba stands there and has a sign that says, "No borders, nobody's illegal, no locked doors, open doors, everybody's welcome." Okay. All right. Granted. Where do you live? No, not Bel Air. I mean, what's your street address? Because you don't believe in borders or walls or property or any of that stuff. Okay. You convinced me. Where do you live? So that we can start posting signs for the illegal aliens to come over and stay at your house. In fact, not even them. I'm just going to come over. And what do they say after that? Nothing. They got nothing. They have nothing to say after that. Because there is nothing to say. These are the kind of arguments that we should be making all the time, and that's why I haven't given up on this country. Because if you ask a liberal who believes in open immigration where they live so that they can take people in, they will not tell you because they don't believe it. If you ask a millennial who believes in socialism to sell his phone in order to distribute the wealth to people who are in greater need, they will not do it because they don't really believe it. If you have a progressive who talks about high taxes and how good high taxes are and how we should raise taxes to help the poor, and you look at that person's tax returns, you will not find that they have overpaid their taxes or even paid what is really a thumbnail estimate of their taxes. You'll find they've taken every single legal deduction they possibly can, and in some cases illegal deductions, because they don't believe what they say they believe. And the only way to change their minds and the minds of the people in the middle are to just grant them the assumption. Grant it. Okay. Another way of granting the assumption is to say to the on the reparations issue is, well, hang on now. This happened 7 generations ago. Why are you owed money? Well, because we're still suffering from the event. Okay, all right, okay, I understand that. Okay, so let's just assume you're right. So the suffering continues downstream basically forever or until reparations are made, right? Yes. Okay, got it. I understand completely. So I think that the white people of America need to write you a check for $100,000 to make up for the horrible slavery that occurred to you. And then I think you need to write a $100,000 check to American Jews who were kept in slavery by African civilization of Egypt. I think you need to write them a check for $100,000, maybe more, because they suffered longer. They were in there. They were slaves for 400 years, not 100 and 250. Technically, they've got a better argument than you. So we'll write you the check to make up for your reparations for slavery, and then you can start finding Jews on the streets of America, and you can write them checks for reparations too. And what are they going to say to that? Well, that was a long time ago. Yes, it was. It surely was. But you're going to have to pay it, pal. You're going to have to pay. You're going to have to pay American Jews money for what your people did to their people. And then it's all over. And then it's all over. It's all over. And we cannot do this to save our lives or the country. Well, anyway, hey, we need members at BillWhittle.com. This is a capitalist society. I have not applied to the federal government for a grant in order to bring you these messages. I don't receive money from the Ford Foundation or the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. I just got a product that I'm selling here, and I think it's valuable. So come on, join the family. What's the point of hanging outside the window with your face pressed against the glass, wishing you could be in there with all those fun people who are laughing and having a great time on Thanksgiving? Just come on in. Everybody's welcome here. Okay, that'll do it, I think. I was going to try and finish the frickin' firewall tonight. I will not. I will do it first thing in the morning. I have to be here at 8 a.m. in the morning because Scott frickin' Ott, who's just one of the most abrasive and nasty people you ever want to meet, is just, if I'm not here in the chair by 8 o'clock, I start getting, the phone starts ringing, and then the screaming starts, and then the cursing, and the personal insults, and then the insults of my wife, and then all of that stuff. It's unbearable. It's just unbearable. I can see that this has backfired on me because Matt Harris says, so Scott makes you work, huh? Excellent. Ding-a-ding-a-ding. Doink. We're out of here. See you guys next week.